Nothing is doing it quite like Spice and Wolf. There is just so many series that try desperately to make their shows very immersive. But this show just does it so casually with so many little scenes, like especially this coin scene where Hollow's trying to learn about the currency of the world and learn about just kind of how certain kingdoms rise and fall. It's legitimately just such a great episode, and once again just goes to establish why I and many others just really love this series, because there's just so many people that try to make a story and really desperately try to make it immersive, like with the world building. They give you so much exposition and world building and background lore, etc. And it becomes very monotonous and it becomes annoying, or it feels like maybe the writer is trying too hard. But in this case, the way it's casually entwined with just the dialogue with the characters and just how it makes sense because this is in a medieval world, and seeing Lawrence talking with Hollow about how currencies work, and since technically the plot of the story is about basically the currency potentially, losing value or gaining value, it's a perfect way to really open up Spice and Wolf's actual story, because I feel like one of the big important aspects that this episode does for everyone is that it gives you a little bit of information on kind of economics. And even if you're someone that's, let's say, not a economic major, you're not someone that, knows everything about just how, let's say, money, stocks, etc. work, I think in general you'll get kind of a understanding of what's going on here, and in a lot of ways you will be Hollow in this situation. People that are watching this show and this is your first time watching and you had no idea what to expect, you probably will be Hollow in this episode. You will be like, I want to know, and then when you get all the information thrown at you, it's just like, oh, this is so much, and she's just like, I won't be able to memorize this. But there's a lot of time. This is a journey. This is a fantasy story, an adventure story, journeying through the world and being a merchant. So there's a long time to really get accustomed to what each coin does or what it means, how much they're worth, etc. All these different things will just come in time. And that's obviously what this series is trying to tell you, is that, eventually you'll be able to know these things because it's so entwined with the world of Spice and Wolf that if you do stay with the series, you stick with it, you will understand what is going on. But let's get into a little bit of nitty-gritty details here. One big aspect that I love about this episode is that it showcases that you don't need to have high-octane fights and battling and all that to have an extremely entertaining episode. Now, once again, this could come off as complete bias. I'm going to be completely blunt here. As someone that is a mega fan of Spice and Wolf, someone that absolutely adores this series to death, and after watching episode 3, episode 1, episode 2, etc., and even watching the dub episode that released today, by the way, the dub is amazing, I'll talk about that in a second. I'm just going to say that it is so wonderful seeing just how they're able to keep the audience's attention, with just an episode like this. And once again, let's get into that, okay? It's a very hard ordeal, especially as an animator and I think an artist, when you're storyboarding an episode that is about basically characters just talking. Now, to be fair, there is a niche community, a group, so to speak, that does like, conversations and slice-of-life anime, myself included. I love that type of stuff. Clearly, I'm talking about Spice and Wolf. But obviously, it is a pretty hard sell to try to get people into a story that is pretty much about merchants trying to make money. Like, it literally can be a little bit of a hard sell, because there can be a lot of complications to try to weigh in, like, what does these coins mean to the audience, how does this, can you care about this, etc. It might be very dull or boring. That's how people might look at it from the outside before they even get into the series, is that, how could this be entertaining? How could a series about economics and money, etc., legitimately be something that makes you want to invest, no pun intended, more time into the story? And the way the first or the third episode technically does this, does it in such a really good way, because it's engaging, thanks to the very beautiful voice acting of Hollow and Lawrence, and how they're able to convey the emotions and bounce off each other with their dialogue, to also the way the camera angles are just done. It feels very traditional as well. Like, I want to talk about that. When I'm watching this anime, it reminds me of just traditional anime. And I don't mean that in a very bad way as well. It looks like I took a trip back 10, 15 plus years ago to how anime used to be made. Like, anyone that goes back and watches anime from 15 plus years ago will know the animation techniques and different things that happened around that time period, especially when, like, Spice of Wolf Season 1 and Season 2 came out. Has definitely, there's a lot of advancements that's happened since then, and those techniques might not be used as much anymore. And I feel like the way the camera is done with the characters, the way it has like these off, camera angles like this and all that, it reminds me a lot of just how the original Spice and Wolf looked. And I feel like the animators that is working on this show truly is respecting the original anime, but in turn, they're trying to elevate it to a new level and make it more enjoyable for newcomers, because obviously there's new art animation techniques after 15 plus years since the original came out. But I really do like that. I think that they have kept the story very engaging, because it's a very tough sell to do something like that with like a show with slice of life and also economics. Now, let's get into the meat of what this episode is about, and that is the fact that Holo shows her worth, and just how she can be quite a sly wolf, and actually make maybe even more money than Lawrence is technically capable of. So, we see early on in this episode that, Holo is once again basically having Lawrence pay for food, etc. for her. He offers her a silver coin. She buys just a mountain of apples, so to speak, because she's hungry and she likes apples. She loves apples. And it's a very iconic scene, honestly. Anyone that looks up, let's say, Holo art online, you'll probably always see her with an apple. It's a very iconic item that she holds throughout the story. And so this is a very significant scene that really kind of showcases, what type of character Holo is at this point, because obviously we know she isn't dumb, but we also know that she's someone that might be very naive or not understand maybe how the world of merchants work and may be taken advantage of, so to speak. But that's clearly not the case with this episode. She was able to even outsmart Lawrence with her tactics, with using the apples to make the fur scented like apples and sell them at a marked up price, basically double the price of what they really are worth. It's pretty impressive, honestly. Even though you might look at her as a swindler, and she scammed the merchant in this episode, in turn, her using the apples like that might be a common tactic that the merchant might use from now on to be able to amp up the goods' price if they're trying to sell it to someone else. So all things considered, it's legitimately an interesting episode to really just showcase Holo's worth, her intelligence, and just kind of how she is as a character, how she is not going to be someone that's more or less a mascot. She actually will be very helpful on the journey. She's a very powerful and wonderful female lead character, and it's one of the reasons why, to this very day, she is probably in my top 3 favorite female characters of all time in literature. She is just very wonderfully written, and there's really a hard argument to be put against her if she's, like, bad in any way. There's just a lot of depth to her character if you're willing to actually read into it and know more about her character. But the episode overall is legitimately fantastic, and I love seeing these scenes that honestly just remind me of my childhood, the nostalgia and all that. It's beautiful. And speaking of beauty, we gotta talk about just the music in general for this show. I've been meaning to talk about it, but I believe Kevin, the person that did the music for Made in Abyss, is working on the Spice and Wolf soundtrack. Now, I could be wrong, don't quote me on what I just said, but I believe so. Regardless of whoever is working on the music is just so whimsical and beautiful, and it perfectly matches the tone and vibe of what Spice and Wolf really should be, and I really appreciate the level and attention to detail that this adaptation is trying to do. It really does feel like I just took a trip to the past, and it feels like it's just been brought to the modern era with just upgraded, like a nice facelift. This is what a remake should be like. This is how a remake for an anime should be done, instead of throwaway material that is just a lackluster remake from, from the original, so to speak. I love how this series is being handled. Now, with all that being said, let's segue into something else, and that is the dub. So, the dub of Spice and Wolf came out today for episode 1. And I know there's a lot of people out there that legitimately prefer, let's say, subs. I understand that. Completely fine. But I was someone that watched the dub and sub of Spice and Wolf years ago, and the dub was incredible. I enjoyed it. It's not perfect, but it was good. And apparently, I watched it. The original VAs, mainly Holo's VA, is back to voice the same character in English dub. And when I heard the voice again, I was just like, holy crap, to actually hear an iconic VA come back to voice a character that legitimately made my childhood, it's a wonderful feeling. I'm just glad to see the love that this series continuously keeps getting. But I'll leave it at that. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoy my content and you enjoy Spice and Wolf, do leave me a like. It does help me out a lot. And with that, Chibi out.